After Lando Norris's brilliant victory in Miami, F1 is heading to Imola in the heart of Italy. It's one of the most evocative circuits on the calendar, and McLaren are confident they'll be quick there too.
If anything, the upgrade favours some of the traits of Imola more than it does Miami, so everyone's sort of very, very excited about what this can hold for the future.
You'll hear more from Lando Norris's race engineer and his old karting team boss later in the show. Welcome to F1 Nation's preview of the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix with me, Tom Clarkson, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by 1996 world champion Damon Hill. Damon, how are you? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been. I don't know what's happened, Tom, but I think the last time we chatted was after Australia, wasn't it? Oh, no, I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah,
I think it was, yeah.
It's been a while, yeah.
But anyway, a lot's happened.
A lot has happened.
Which is good. We like that.
We like that. What did you make of Lando's victory in Miami last week?
Well, now I have to explain that I was in another part of the world that is virtually, 11-hour time difference to Miami. So I had great difficulty in following what was going on. So imagine my surprise when I look at my Instagram and X feed to see that Max did not win the Miami Grand Prix. Somebody else did. And then I spent the rest of the time trying to work out how that happened. So I'm still catching up.
But it brings back memories of Hungary 1993, your first win. Just can you imagine what Lando was going through?
Yeah, it's also, wasn't it with Jensen's first one was Hungary as well, I think. But there is this watershed moment, isn't there? There is this threshold you've crossed when you've become a winner. And there was a lot of talk about Lando. I mean, I only learnt this afterwards because I heard that some people have been suggesting he was a choker and someone who hadn't managed to cross the line. Well, I never thought of Lando in that way. I thought he'd done everything that could be expected of someone who is an aspiring and a potential Grand Prix winner and potential world champion, in that he'd paid his dues and he learned the hard way. Don't forget, I was in Russia when he nearly won and sadly got caught out in the final few laps. And I myself remember how I came so close so many times before it finally happened. And that is the nature of the sport, is it? So you get a little closer and then something trips you up in the last few bits and you start to wonder how it will ever happen, or will it ever happen? But you put that thought out of your mind because you know as long as you keep doing what you're doing, you knocking on that door, opportunity will certainly open the door eventually, and it'll just suddenly just all happen. That's precisely what happened in my case. I started winning all the time, or winning a lot more, and I expect that Lando can do the same.
But what changes in your psyche to allow you to do that?
I think it's not so much your own psyche. It's just annoying. I mean, all these guys think they can win. If the right circumstances came along, they win a Grand Prix. Some of them are lucky enough to have done it repeatedly. So there's no doubt in anybody's mind that they can do it. What now happens is that you've proven that what you already knew. So Lando's just basically said, well, I already knew that I could do this. It wasn't an issue. It's just simply you people are so impatient and you don't believe and you have so little faith in what I know to be true. And that's what all of them will be saying. So if you think about it, when you win, you also upset people because you are then different to other people. You've put them behind you in terms of your success. And now he's done it.
And the point is, it's never too late to start winning in Formula One. That was race number 110 for Lando. Nico Rosberg took 111 races to win his first race, and look what he went on to go and do, win the World Championship in 2016. Jenson Button took 113 races to win his first race in Formula One, 2009 World Champion. So the sky is the limit for Lando Norris now, and it really was a wonderful moment when he crossed the line to become the latest F1 winner. And the first person he spoke to on the radio was his longtime race engineer, Will Joseph.
You've done it, mate. You've done it.
Woo! Woo! We did it, Will! We did it! I've been speaking to Will and also to Ricky Flynn, who ran the karting team that Lando first raced with. And I began the conversation by asking Will how the celebrations were in Miami.
I mean, for me, they weren't too big, to be honest. We went to the hotel bar, had a few drinks there. Lando, Zach and everyone joined us. I'm pretty sure there were some plans afterwards, but I actually had plans on the Monday, which I was very keen to stick to. So a relatively quiet night for me.
I think a lot of people don't realise that it was your first win in Formula One as well. So the Miami Grand Prix was a huge moment for both of you.
Yeah, that's right. No, I mean, it was my first win as race engineer. I won with Lewis as performance engineer and won as part of the team before that. But yeah, you're right, as race engineer, my first win. And it was a big moment for me and for us all. And, you know, it's still sinking in, the amount of congratulations that we're receiving from members of the team, members that were from the team, friends and family. You know, people are reaching out to congratulate us, and that's been, I think, one of the nicest things from the whole event.
Ricky, I take it you were watching the race in Miami?
I was with some friends out having a meal, and then obviously with Lando leading with about 15, 20 laps to go, whatever it was, my phone was just sitting on the table, and then all of a sudden it was like a Christmas tree lit up, and all family, friends and everything obviously were on to me. Are you watching this? You see it looks like he's going away, and he's going away from Max and everything. And then obviously put it on my phone and watched the last sort of 20 laps, which luckily, I guess even for you, Will, was nicely boring, yeah, because it looked like he had a nice gap and he was controlling it and everything looked in hand. So, but yeah, it's not always as simple as that, but it looked like it was all quite in control for yourselves.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, I was amazed when the safety car restart, which in fact we've just discussed here, you know, we didn't get the best safety car restart, but we managed to break the DRS gap within that first lap. And then I started my stopwatch and I turned to, I used the intercom to talk to Xavi, and I said, this is going to be a long half an hour. But it was a pleasantly boring half an hour, and we sort of controlled it from there.
It looked great for you. So, yeah, congratulations, as it's your first win as well, by the way. So,
thank you very much.
Ricky, was it an emotional moment for you to see Lando win that first race in Formula One? Because you launched his career in a way back in the karting days.
I'd like to hope we helped a little bit along the way. But yeah, obviously, massively emotional. Obviously, we've got 4 drivers that are on the F1 grid that have come through our team back in the day. But that's our first win as well for a lad that's come through us, and to achieve obviously the highest in F1 to win a race. So yeah, great proud moment, and we did have a few beers after that while I was with these people. So yeah, so it was a great time, and a great time for me because I was out already and I wasn't at a kart race or on an aeroplane on the way back. So very proud moment for everybody, I think.
Ricky, who are the other 3 drivers on the F1 grid?
Oscar, we had him, Logan and Joe. So those 4 have sort of come through our team over the years. So Lando and Joe were teammates for a year. Oscar was a year after Lando. Logan was the following year. So,
Ricky, tell us about the first time you met Lando. What sort of kid was he? What sort of impression did he make on you?
The smallest, tiniest kid you've ever seen, and he was so small. I'd seen him in the UK doing some UK stuff in cadet racing and that. First time he was with us, we'd done a test in Castelletto near Milan, and he turned up with Mark still, who obviously manages him now, and his mechanic, and probably took 3.5 hours, something like that, just to be able to fit him in the kart so he could reach everything. He was that small. They brought a lot of stuff with them that had already been adapted, so we put that on the kart. We'd done probably 6-7 races there in the past, and the last hour of the first day, Lando was quicker than we'd ever gone round there before. So he thought, wow, this kid is mighty special, you know. And he was probably above my waistline, and I'm not a tall guy, you know, so he was so tiny. Less than, 40 kilos or whatever it was back then, you know. But yeah, on that first day, and the speed he was, you just went, wow, this kid is exceptional. Been doing it now quite a few years, so we've had quite a lot of youngsters come through, but you could see he was a big star in the making back then.
When I look back and see the photos, it does remind you of how young he was when he sort of first drove the car. I wasn't at the Portimao test that he did with us, but we were hearing information come back from that, and already there was a sort of a buzz about this young British kid. But then I ran Lando in his Hungary test, which was the first time he drove the F1 car. And already then, you know, there was sort of this very useful, very small still, quiet kid running the car. And I think Mark and John were there too, so we sort of met them for the first time. And they sort of stood their ground and just quietly allowed Lando to sort of join the team and integrate and get on with it. And through that test, yes, it was very clear very early on the potential that was there. And we just sort of needed the time to let that flourish and let that grow.
And Ricky, back to you. He was the youngest KF karting world champion in 2014. How was that victory received within the world of karting?
Everybody by then knew he was a star. He'd won the European Championship the year before us in juniors, which is obviously a massive feat as well. So he won the European champs, then won the world champs the year after. And like you say, the youngest ever senior and probably the smallest ever senior that will ever win it, I'm sure. It wasn't by surprise that he won it to anybody that was there that day or that year that was involved, because wherever you went, he was one of the fastest, if not the fastest, and just a very, very good kid at that age. Even at 14, you knew that there was something special there.
And did he have Formula One ambitions back then? Was that obvious?
He used to speak about it, but obviously all of the kids that are with us, that's their goal. So they're all trying to achieve that. So yeah, there's references made that this is my favourite driver and this is my favourite team and who I want to be with and all of that. You hear a lot of it, but yeah, he had a good chance to get in there.
So Will, he comes to McLaren, he gets the race seat in 2019. Do you think an element of frustration had started to creep in? Because what was Miami? It was race number 110. He'd come close to victories before. Had you sensed any frustration and any change in his demeanour going into that race weekend in the US?
I mean, I don't think going into the race weekend we sort of had that any sense. You know, we'd certainly over the course of the beginning of the season discussed how we were going to try and approach things a bit differently. And as of China, we kind of took a different approach into how we were going to communicate during the races. But was there frustration? If there was, then we never discussed it in a manner that was bothering to us. I think we had a clear set of goals and pathways to try and ignore that and block it out. I'm sure there was pressure from outside. I mean, there was definitely pressure from outside. There was probably pressure from certain people inside as well. But for us, it was very important to ignore that. It's kind of business as usual. You try and approach each event trying to get the best performance you can. And we've always said, you know, the score will take care of itself. If you do the right things, if you pair it in the right way, if you execute well, then when the time is right, you will get that victory. So I would like to think that we put all those frustrations aside and they didn't affect us.
Do you think his trajectory within Formula One, his development within Formula One would have been different had he won, and I'm going to say it again, Will, that race in Russia 2021?
I've been thinking about this over the past few days because you're not the first person to ask a similar question. You know, will we now unleash a different Lando? And honestly, I'm not quite sure yet, because potentially, you know, some of the unnecessary pressure does subside, but ultimately, you know, you drive to the performance of the car, and as long as you're maximising that performance at every single event, then if we can deliver a car that can still outperform the others, then that is when those wins and the more wins will come. So I would love to think that the floodgates will just open, but the reality is we're still up against some great competitors. You know, the onus is still on us as a team to continue to develop the car and to continue to support both Lando and Oscar in order to facilitate them both to win.
Well, Will, you mentioned, you know, if you've got the car to continue winning in Formula One, well, let's talk about that. How good was the upgrade you ran in Miami? What does it mean for Imola next weekend?
I mean, the upgrade that we brought was ginormous in size, and the extraordinary effort by everyone back at McLaren to bring all those upgrades out to Miami. You know, it was unfortunate we couldn't put every single piece on both cars, but each car had a good amount of upgrades. Oscar will receive the sort of second part of that package when we get to Imola. If anything, the upgrade favours some of the traits of Imola more than it does Miami. So everyone's sort of very, very excited about what this can hold for the future. You know, if you look back to what happened in Austria last year, you know, we put the upgrade on then and we went well, we had good performance. And at the time we were kind of thinking, oh, well, you know, maybe it's because we just go well in Austria. And then when it starts to behave well and perform at subsequent races, you know, you start to build a confidence, you build a further understanding of how to exploit that. So everyone is very excited. Not only that, but, you know, we're working on the next round of upgrades. You know, we're looking ahead and we're asking big things from the team. You know, the team has given a lot in order to bring these bits here. And now we're saying, well, look, can we do it again? And the win in Miami, I think, helps you justify those decisions. And people are they're excited, they're working hard, they're ambitious, they're pushing hard now to see the next step.
Will, you talk about the traits of Imola. What is specific about that racetrack?
It's less about the specifics of Imola. Maybe I should reword it and say the specifics of Miami meant that the upgrade would be less powerful there potentially than we have seen in Imola. Miami has a lot of very, very low speed corners, and the upgrade should behave better in more medium to high speed corners. And therefore, when we get to Imola, which is in more favour of that kind of corner, hopefully we will see an even further benefit.
It's been a fantastic upturn, I think, for McLaren, for Lando, for Formula One, what happened in Miami. I just wanted to end our little chat by asking both of you, can you tell us something about Lando that we might not already know?
I'm just trying to think if there's anything I'm willing to share that you might not already know, Tom. It's always, that is a difficult question because, as you know, I think it goes without saying that the relationship between the race engineer and the driver is born on trust. And trust, we said from day one, was going to be the most important thing between us. We have the ultimate trust in one another, that there are things that we say to one another that we don't even share with the team, let alone with people outside. And breaking that trust, I think, would be, diabolical for the future relationship. So I'm going to say there are things, but I definitely won't share them. And that's not because they're bad. It's not because it would paint Lando in a bad light. It's simply because we trust each other, and that trust must continue.
Yeah, that's a fascinating insight in itself. Ricky, anything from you?
No, he's nothing. He was a nice young lad back then, and he's grown into a very, very nice man. So his work ethic and everything was even phenomenal back then. He'd be in the engine van, checking his own engines out in the evening and things like that. He was a very, very small kid, and we had to Velcro him in the kart on one particular track where he was bouncing over the curbs and couldn't stay in the kart type thing. So he was just a very, very nice, well-grounded kid back then who just wanted to go racing, and that's all he wanted to do day in, day out. And when he wasn't in the car, it was like, well, when are we back out? When are we back on track? When are we out next? When's the next race? So just a lad who just wanted to go racing. It's just in his blood, I'm sure.
Ricky, very well said. I'm sure everyone at McLaren can relate to what you're saying. Certainly my experiences of Lando are that he is everything you've just described. So, guys, thank you very much for your time. It's been great to chat to you both about Lando, and good luck this coming weekend in Imola, Will.
Thank you, Tom. Nice to speak to you, Ricky, and Tom, will catch up soon.
All the best for Imola.
So Will's suggesting McLaren's upgrades might be better suited to Imola this coming weekend. So do they go into the race as favourites off the back of Miami, or are Red Bull still the team to beat? What do you think, Damon?
Well, it's great that they have made progress, and the pace was there in Miami. So the race pace was there. But now we have a slight caveat to this, which is that certainly it seems this season at least, that if you are in traffic, if you have any kind of disturbance on your car, then your tyres seem to suffer. So being out front is a big bonus. Safety car factor also to throw in there. So on pure pace, where did Lando qualify? Was it fifth, on the grid? So the sheer pace of the Red Bull is still there, and I don't expect that to disappear overnight. I think there's still probably more work to do. I mean, let's be honest, if they've made progress enough to be as quick as Red Bull, then that's terrific. They still have to beat Max Verstappen.
They do. And let's not forget too that the last time Formula One raced at Imola 2 years ago, because very sadly last year's Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix was cancelled, but 2 years ago Lando Norris finished on the podium in third place. He loves the place, and McLaren have a great record there as well. I mean, the threat of Red Bull is ever present, and Damon, I remember Adrian Newey saying to me at the first race in Bahrain that the Red Bull is going to look very different at race 7. Well, we're coming to race 7 now, so they are bringing new parts to the Red Bull. What are they going to do? Well, we're going to have to wait till first practice on Friday to find out. And I actually feel that this weekend is going to shape the rest of the 2024 season, because Red Bull are bringing new bits, Ferrari are bringing new bits, which they've already tested at Fiorano last week. McLaren, of course, have got their new bits, and Oscar Piastri in the second McLaren is going to have the full upgrade package on his car. So how it plays out this weekend, I think, is going to give us a lot of clues as to how the rest of the season is going to play.
It is going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. Imola's got very high-speed corners, but not a lot of big radius corners, and there's precious little in the way of very slow corners. So slippery cars will be better there, and cars with good change of direction. And, it doesn't necessarily, I don't think, need maximum downforce. I mean, you've got a relatively high average speed, I think, at Imola. So I still think the Red Bull's going to be quick there, but... if they're bringing upgrades, then all I can say is I don't know what those upgrades are going to do. No one of us does at the moment, except you can pretty much assume it's going to be better. I mean, we've seen people bring upgrades and have difficulty, haven't we? We've seen them bringing upgrades in and actually it doesn't work first time out. They've had to fine-tune their setup.
Look at Haas last year. They spent a lot of money bringing upgrades to the Austin Grand Prix, and Nico Hülkenberg had reverted back to the old car at the following race.
With a team like Haas, you have to say they are limited in resources, and so possibly they get their upgrades wrong. But I mean, when you've got teams like Mercedes, bringing upgrades and they don't work when they put them on, then it tells you that it's not always a panacea to everything. It's not the thing that they've been looking for. Until they've got time to tune it and understand it. And that takes maybe more than one race.
But isn't that the most impressive thing about McLaren, is that ever since they brought upgrades to the Austrian Grand Prix last year, everything they've put on that car has made it better. They completely understand this generation of cars now in the way that Adrian Newey and Red Bull do. And that is what is so encouraging for everyone in Woking and all the Papaya fans around the world.
And also, they did something really bold, which was they threw their original car in the bin, effectively. The concept of it. And they went, okay, this is not the way. We need to revert to the way we think has got more potential. And since they've done that, they built on that time and time again and actually have caught up. Their rate of progress, I think, has to be the fastest in Formula One over since maybe the middle of last year. Their rate of progress in development in terms of lap time gained, I wouldn't be surprised if they're the one on the steepest curve going forward. So that has to be a little bit of concern for Red Bull, because if that trajectory continues, obviously it gets more difficult the closer you get to the optimum. But their rate of progress has been phenomenal, and it was always, if they carried on that route, it was always inevitable they'd win a race. But for them to be super confident, they will have to out-qualify the Red Bulls, get pole position, and then lead the race, gradually increasing their lead and getting the fastest lap, and then we'll hear more of Max's complaining about understeer, and he did not like the fact that he couldn't catch up. Lando, we haven't seen that this year when he's had to push. What does the car do? Where is the limit of that Red Bull? And I think that Miami showed that somewhere there is a limit. I know there was talk about the car being damaged, but he refuted that.
I actually think Max was being very generous to his mate Lando actually after the race, and that he didn't want to take anything away from Lando. I'm sure that Red Bull was losing downforce, because I think the telemetry was saying that, but I thought Max was magnanimous in defeat and just didn't want to take anything away from Lando. He was very generous towards Lando. Warmer, sunnier days are calling. And if that means you'd like to spend less time in the kitchen meal prepping and more time crushing your wellness goals, then look no further than Factor's no prep, no mess meals. With Factor, you can choose from 35 nutritious meals and 65 add-ons each week. All meals are chef-crafted and dietitian approved, and the best part is they're ready to eat in just 2 minutes. And you know what that means? No shopping, no prepping, no cooking, and no cleaning up. All you have to do is heat and eat. There's tasty dishes to keep you fueled up and feeling good all day long, from breakfast through to dessert, no matter what your wellness goals are. Just choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat a well-balanced diet. You already know that I'm a big fan of their jalapeno cheddar lime chicken with cauliflower rice, so I definitely recommend you give that a try too. And if you're in the mood for something a little fancy, why not treat yourself to one of their restaurant quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. Make the menu work for you. Head to factormeals.com/nation50 and use the code NATION50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code NATION50 at factormeals.com/nation50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. The theme of this week's show seems to be, there's a little bit of race engineer chat, isn't there? We've already heard from Will Joseph, but Damon, I did want to ask you about the importance of the driver-race engineer relationship, because we've seen a lot of change in the pit lane. You know, on the eve of the Miami Grand Prix, Alex Chan, who is Valtteri Bottas's race engineer, was moved sideways. A new guy was brought in. We hear on the eve of the Grand Prix this weekend in Imola that Charles Leclerc is losing his longtime race engineer, Xavi Marcos, to be replaced by Brian Botzi. And so, you know, that's going to put Charles on the back foot as we go into this weekend, as he's trying to get his head around the upgrades. Just, I mean, Damon, how important is that relationship? You know, how much is this costing Bottas and Leclerc?
As a driver, you learn this pretty quickly. It's not your team. You don't make the decisions. It's the, you know, with Fred Vasseur in case of Ferrari, and the way they structure things and the way they want to move people around is down to really the team themselves, although they should be taking into account their working relationship. But what they don't want to do, and we saw this with Lewis and Nico. Do you remember that year where they swapped over Lewis's race engineers and they basically, I don't know who was behind that or why that happened, but basically, you know, there is always the thought that there's an A team and a B team within a team. I think that teams don't like it when there's factions that develop within the garage, because it can be destructive. So they sometimes like to keep it fluid, and also they like people to grow as well. So there'll be engineers there who want to have a stab at being a race engineer for a driver and showing what they can do, and there are other people who get tired of it and want to move on. That relationship, though, is crucial, because you have to trust the guy you're talking to, whether it's GP with Max or whether it's Pete Bonington with Lewis, you know, who've worked together for a very long time. They know each other. They know the psyche of the driver, because you hear on the radio, oh, I don't like these tyres or blah, blah, blah. And they know how to deal with him in a race situation. They know how to get the best out of the driver. So there's a psychological playing the person or understanding little foibles they have, and knowing when to respond to that and when not to. You know, so sometimes maybe with Charles, you know, maybe someone needs to have a firmer hand with him and reassure him a bit more if he feels like, I mean, it became a meme, a joke, didn't it? About every time Charles came on the radio, the guy came back, said, we are checking. You know, well, I mean, we are checking is not very reassuring. You know, it should be, don't worry about that. You keep driving and we'll sort it out. So, yeah, there's a whole art to it.
And I guess Lewis Hamilton will be very keen for Pete Bonington to go with him from Mercedes to Ferrari next year, because it'll help his introduction to the team. What is it? If he's got someone who knows him and can translate, not literally into Italian, but translate to the other engineers what Lewis is trying to say, it will just speed up the introduction.
Well, that might be good. It might not be good. I mean, when Michael went, he took with him Ross Brawn and a whole bunch of other people, you know, so he probably, you know, had negotiated his place within Ferrari, and that's part of the deal was, I'm going to feel comfortable because I don't know anyone there, so I'm going to bring the whole team with me. But I don't think that, I've not heard that that's what Lewis is doing. And it might be the case that if you to do that, you create a kind of wall between you and Ferrari. So in some ways, going to a team like Ferrari, in some ways you have to trust them too, and you have to kind of go there and say, okay, well, how do you guys go about things? And the whole thing with Lewis is spending such a long time with Mercedes. Maybe he needs a fresh environment. Maybe he would benefit from having the people around him. I mean, when we're going to Imola and Ayrton moved out of McLaren and went to Williams, and he was not sure about the team. He didn't know how the team worked, didn't know how the team thought. And he was just getting to the point where he knew who to ask for help. And there was a piece by Ian Harrison, who was the team manager at the time. And, you know, part of his job was to say to Ayrton, listen, if you need anything, you know, to communicate with him, listen, you can talk to me as well, and we'll sort it out for you. And so knowing the people within the team, it takes a few weeks, maybe months, to know how they work. And Ferrari have invested a lot in Lewis, obviously, so they will be doing everything they can to build comfort around him and also give him a clue as to how they work, and they'll want to know how he works because he might change some of their approach as well. So that will be a very, very fascinating story to see unfold. But I mean, you started off talking about engineers and the relationship, and you can be very alone as a racing driver if you feel like something's happened and you weren't even consulted, like a race engineer. So in Valtteri's case, I believe he wasn't even consulted. That can be very destabilizing. Wait a minute, I need that guy. He knows the team. He goes back to the factory. You don't do all that quite as much as your engineer does. He goes into engineering meetings. You need that guy.
It'll be interesting to see what sort of reception Lewis gets from the tifosi, the Italian fans this weekend at Imola. I think he's going to play to the crowd, don't you? I think we're going to see waves from the cockpit. From the pit lane at Imola, you can see the hill up there on the left, which will be covered in red. And I think he's going to come away from Imola with a real feel-good factor. They're going to be chanting his name. There's going to be banners. It's going to be fantastic. And what is Imola? It's 56 miles from Maranello. Surely he's going to go there on the Monday after the race, right? I think you and I should go there, wait outside Ferrari on Monday and just welcome him in, because I'm sure he's going to be there. Why wouldn't he?
Well, do you think Toto will be saying, listen, you can go, but you've got to bring something back in terms of information? I don't know. I can imagine Toto saying, well, you're still under contract, mate. You shouldn't be fraternising with the enemy just yet.
One last thing I wanted to pick your brains about, Damon. Kevin Magnussen, have you had a chance to look back at Kevin's sprint and also the crash he had with Logan Sargent in the race? He's got a bit of a cricket score of penalty points now. He's just, 2 away from a race ban? Look, first of all, what do you make of K-Mag's defensive tactics? We saw it in Saudi Arabia earlier in the year. We saw it again in the sprint where he's driving a wide bus. Do you admire that in the way that Lewis Hamilton did, actually? He came out after the sprint saying, I love that racing. Or do you actually think he's overstepped the mark? And as Andrea Stella said, actually, after the sprint, he said, I think he needs to go and take a race off.
Yeah. Well, Andrea's point was, I think, that when you repeatedly do the same thing, then it's no good just dishing out the same punishment, because it basically means that you have got over the first punishment. You haven't learned your lesson. You haven't changed your ways. If it is a way of you racing, then the more times you do it, then perhaps the more severe the penalty should be. And I kind of understand that. I think that if that is a tactic now that's creeping in, that it's okay to be a mobile chicane, then I think they need to do something to make sure it doesn't happen repeatedly with the same driver, anyway, in the same thing. But it is part of racing. And I do think that there's an element of this which is, well, those are the rules. And if I've done anything illegal, penalise me. And if I haven't, then get off my back, And I think the Logan Sargent thing was actually almost, he put himself in a position, but if Logan hadn't turned in, then he might have got away with it. I mean, it was perhaps not so much. It definitely wasn't a deliberate barging off. It might have been a risky place to be, because it was almost certainly going to be a potential coming together. But it's hard when you're racing cars when you're going backwards. It's much easier when you're going through the field.
Well, and everyone who is, I hate this expression, so I can't believe I'm going to use it, but who are out qualifying their car. And I think of Fernando Alonso. That car is better over one lap than it is in the race. So he's qualifying higher up than the position that he is capable of racing in. So it's elbows out trying to keep people behind him. And then he ends up getting into trouble when he touches Carlos Sainz, as he did in China. And rubbing is not racing in open wheel racing. Would you agree with that, or do you think a little bit of rubbing's all right?
No, I don't. I honestly don't. I think in open wheel racing, the objective is to not touch the other car. The objective is to race cleanly and to get past, because there's too much can happen when you've got open wheels. It's almost certainly going to be, you're going to probably lose your front wing as well. What's the point? It's a very precise art if you can manage to get alongside someone and actually just rub wheels. It only has to be a tiny bit out and you're flying through the air. So I don't think that's part of what this sport is about. There are forms of motorsport where that's part of the fun. Usually saloon car type races, stock cars, but nudging and stuff in NASCAR, I think it's part of it. But this is supposed to be an art. It's supposed to be more an art rather than a boxing match. It's not supposed to be physical combat.
K-Mag probably needs to be careful at Imola and the races going forward, but I'm guessing there's a young man called Ollie Behrman, who is the Haas reserve driver, who's probably rubbing his hands saying, come on, K-Mag, keep it going, then I might get a race out of this.
Quite a difference getting it going in the Haas, isn't it, compared to being in a Ferrari, but...
But that'll be a great calling card for Ollie, won't it? When Haas and Ayo Komatsu are trying to work out who they're going to put in the car for 2025. Well, Damon, it's been great to chat. I suppose under the heading Any Other Business, who else are you looking forward to seeing this weekend? Do you think the Astons will be quick? Do you see the Alpine got their first point last time out? Do you think they can do something?
Well, I think they've scraped themselves off the bottom, haven't they? They started very much at the back. So I think that's good news. No one likes to see a team that is the runt of the litter. You want to see people having a go and making progress. If they've made some progress, that's great news, and it lifts everyone's spirits. Everyone works so hard in Formula One. All these teams are really trying their very best. I'd love to think that Mercedes could find something.
They're bringing some upgrades to Imola for George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. It's not a big upgrade package, we're being told, but there are a few bits coming. James Allison, technical director, is coming to the race. He wasn't in Miami. I don't know how significant that is, other than he's going to be on the ground in the garage listening to the feedback.
It's a short flight. But I think maybe it's obviously more difficult for Mercedes. McLaren have been chasing for a long time now and had to reorganise. And of course, if you've got nothing, you've got nothing to lose. So it's perhaps sometimes easier to make that decision. So Mercedes have taken a while to recognise there is a problem, believe there's a problem, and then it's like turning the ship. It's a bigger ship. Perhaps it takes more time to turn it around. But we keep hearing these kind of false dawns things. They say, we found what it is. We know which direction it's going. So let's give them a chance. Let's hope they do find something. And
one of the news stories I'm really looking forward to finding out more about when we get to the track on Thursday is the pace of Kimi Antonelli, who tested at Silverstone last week in the 2-year-old Merc, and George Russell was setting the bogey time for him. And I don't know, no one has told me yet, but I want to find out how close Antonelli got to George Russell's time, because that'll tell us a lot, I think, about what Toto Wolff is thinking for his driver lineup next year. I think it's a lot of expectation being placed on Antonelli. Toto's already acknowledged that, but this is part of the game. This is part of the sport. You either can deal with that or you can't. And if you can't, then you perhaps don't deserve to be there. And the greats can deal with it, can't they? Just look at what Max Verstappen was able to do, going straight from Formula 3 to Formula 1, and he'd only done 20-something races, and he wins in Spain in 2016. He was ready, born ready, I think. Yeah, they have unshakable faith in their own abilities. Well, I have unshakable faith in your predictions, Damon, and I think it's time for us to each give our podium predictions for Imola. What are you thinking? Please, anyone listening to this, do not, whatever you do, place any kind of money on my predictions, please. Okay, I accept no responsibility. You're going to ask me for a prediction now, right? I want top three. Oh, okay, top three. I think Lando's on a high. I don't think he can beat Max. I think it's Max. I think one of the Ferraris are going to do well. I think it will be Charles and then Lando. So you're going for Max first, Charles second, Lando third. Yeah. Okay, I believe in momentum, and I am going to go for a Lando Norris victory at one of his favourite tracks, and I think it's going to be very close behind. I think you're right, Red Bull and Ferrari will be in the mix, so I'm going to go for Max and Charles as well, second and third, but it's going to be really tight, and we're going to have three constructors in the top three, and F1 2024 starts now. Is that your heart leading your head there, Tom, or is that a cold-hearted, analytical... appraisal of what's going to happen? In your FIA press conference, you've got to say, Lando, I've predicted you're going to win the Grand Prix, and it's your favourite track, and don't disappoint me. He is in the press conference on Thursday. Damon, I think, what Will was saying earlier in the show, I think those McLaren upgrades are geared much more towards medium and high-speed corners. You said it yourself that Imola is more about medium and high-speed corners. And I think the guy's on a high. I think the sluice gates are going to open. And this is the arrival of Lando Norris. How is your F1 fantasy team doing? We've got more than 300,000 teams in our league, and 205,040 of them are ahead of our team, F1 Nation Racing. Despite having Oscar Piastri and not Lando Norris, we actually had a promising weekend in Miami, by our standards, scoring our highest total of the season so far with 265 points. Oscar's overtakes in the race and his performance in F1 Sprint gave us 58 of those, while Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso and Yuki Tsunoda all provided us with valuable points. We did have Kevin Magnussen as well, but thankfully we applied the no negative chip, otherwise we might have been in big trouble with all his penalties. The F1 Nation World Championship 2024 has a new leader in Ford and Ferrari on 1,789 points. Well done to you. They're 9 clear of Paddock Here I Come in second, with Yellow Racing a further 16 points adrift in third. It's very close at the top. So this week, we're going to bring in F1's newest winner, Lando Norris, and give him our DRS boost, so he scores double points. We're backing VCarb to have a good home race by adding Daniel Ricciardo, and Damon thinks you need a slippery car to do well at Imola, so let's have Alex Albon and hope he can use the Williams straight line speed to score points. It would be their first of the season. So our full lineup is Norris, Leclerc, Tsunoda, Ricciardo and Albon, with home teams Ferrari and VCarb as our constructors. And remember, it's never too late to start playing F1 Fantasy. It's totally free and you can win some great prizes. Just go to the official F1 website or app to enter your team and join our league to compete against us and other listeners. And you have until qualifying for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix to make any changes to your team. It's the 30th anniversary of that tragic weekend when Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna lost their lives. Damon, you were racing that weekend, of course. How do you feel about going back to Imola again this weekend?
I don't think you can go to Imola without remembering that occasion. People who were there will always remember the whole day, the whole weekend, really. It's part of Formula One history. It took the lives of two lovely young men, who one was just starting out in his career and the other one was reached the top and was the standard bearer, really, I think, for what it is to be a full-blown Grand Prix racing driver. And that was the biggest shock of all, I think. It was, people still talk about Jim Clark, and that was how many years ago? The loss of a racing driver, or Gilles Villeneuve, So their name will live forever and it will always be associated with that track. But what they loved was racing, and we're going to go racing and we're going to carry on doing what we do, but we're doing it differently. We've improved the safety. We've improved lots of aspects of what we do. And I wonder, we can only wonder what they would have made of how it is today. I'd like to think that they would, if Ayrton had lived, he would be watching this and commentating on, on the drivers that we have. It'd be great to have listen to him to pick out who has got it and who hasn't. And I wish I'd known Ayrton better and for longer and have had a chance to have spent the entire season with him as his teammate. But that wasn't to be. And we all lost, we all lost him. And I was with David Brabham the other day at Stirling Moss's memorial in Westminster Abbey. Stirling died a couple of years ago, and he was a Senna. He was the flaming comet, that came into our sport and won everything. And he was revered because of that for his whole life. And he filled Westminster Abbey, and David was teammates to Roland, so we are the lucky ones. We survived, but in some ways they're the ones that go on forever because of how they're remembered.
Well, Damon, thank you for those words. Thank you for your time today. And I look forward to seeing you later in the week at Imola.
You've got to show me this pizza place.
Yeah.
Well, we can't go to Italy and eat pizza. There's much. No. There's other foods.
Damon, there's pizza.
Yeah.
And then there's pizza.
Yeah.
And this is pizza.
Well, okay. Right, we're having that and a beer.
Yeah, okay. DH, great to chat. See you soon.
Cheers, Tom.
A couple of notices before we go. This week's guest on F1 Beyond the Grid is Martin Brundle, who reflects on his rookie season 40 years ago. That's available from Wednesday on your podcast app and the official F1 YouTube channel. And why not check out F1 Explains, who have Günther Steiner on their latest show. We'll, of course, be back next Monday from the Imola paddock with our review of the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. But for now, F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios.